I'm Ruby, 36, and I've spent most of my life trying to earn my father's love. Growing up, I thought if I just tried harder, got better grades, or became the perfect daughter, he'd finally see me. But some relationships aren't meant to be saved. When my father missed my college graduation but attended my stepsister's just a week later, something inside me finally broke. It was the last betrayal in a lifelong pattern that forced me to walk away. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever felt like the forgotten child in your own family, hit subscribe and join me on this journey of healing and self-discovery. My earliest memories of my father are tinted with golden light. I remember sitting on his shoulders at the county fair when I was 5, his strong hands holding my tiny legs as I squealed with delight. I remember him teaching me to fish at the lake behind our house, his patience as I tangled the line again and again. There were bedtime stories with different voices for each character, and Saturday morning pancake competitions to see who could create the silliest shapes. Back then, I truly was Daddy's little girl. He would swing me around the living room, calling me his Ruby Tuesday after the song. My mother would watch us with a soft smile, our little family complete and happy in those fleeting moments. Then came the arguments, hushed at first after I'd gone to bed, but eventually spilling into daylight hours. I was 8 when they sat me down on our faded blue couch and told me they were getting divorced. My father wiped away my tears with his thumb and promised, "Nothing will change between us, Ruby. I'll always be your dad." I believed him completely. The first signs that his promise might be empty came just 3 months after he moved into an apartment across town. Our weekend visits became punctuated by phone calls from women I didn't know. Sometimes he'd cut our Sunday afternoons short because he had plans. I didn't understand what was happening, but I felt the shift like a shadow creeping across my childhood. When I was 10, he introduced me to Diane. She had perfect blonde hair and a laugh that seemed to sparkle in the air. She tried to connect with me, asking about school and my friends, but all I could think about was how my father looked at her the way he used to look at my mom. A year later, they were married. At their wedding, I was the junior bridesmaid in a dress I hated, standing beside a 7-year-old girl I'd never met before that day. Tiffany, my new stepsister, had the same blonde hair as her mother and a confidence I immediately envied. During the reception, my father danced with her, standing on his shoes, exactly the way he used to dance with me. Our visitation schedule changed after the wedding. Instead of every weekend, I now saw my father every other weekend. When I asked why, he explained that he needed to balance his time between all his family members. I nodded like I understood, but inside I was doing the math. Every child of divorce eventually does. I had been downgraded to half as important. My father and Diane bought a beautiful 2-story house in Oakwood Heights, an upscale neighborhood with tree-lined streets and fancy mailboxes. When they gave me the tour, they showed me Tiffany's room first. It had been specially designed with a ballet theme, complete with a bar along one wall and a crystal chandelier. "And this will be your room when you visit," my father said, leading me to what was clearly the guest bedroom. No personal touches, no consideration for my interests. Just beige walls and a generic floral bedspread. Christmas that year was when the disparity became impossible to ignore. Tiffany received an American Girl doll with an entire wardrobe, a new bicycle, and a jewelry box filled with costume pieces. I got a sweater, a board game, and a gift card to Borders. My father didn't seem to notice my disappointment, or if he did, he didn't acknowledge it. Meanwhile, my mother was struggling. Child support checks sometimes came late, and she had gone back to school to get a better job. We moved to a smaller apartment, and I started to understand the concept of budget shopping and generic brands. During one particularly tight month, I overheard my mother on the phone with my father asking if he could help with my dental work. His response, which she later tried to hide from me, was that he had financial obligations to his family too. As if I wasn't part of that family anymore. Despite feeling like an outsider, I tried to connect with Tiffany and Diane. Tiffany was actually a sweet kid who looked up to me, often asking me to braid her hair or show her how to make friendship bracelets. Diane was polite but distant, her smiles never quite reaching her eyes when they were directed at me. I sensed she viewed me as a complication rather than a welcome addition to their household. The first truly significant disappointment came when I was 13. I was graduating from middle school and had been selected to give a short speech as the top student in my class. For weeks I practiced in front of my mirror, imagining how proud my father would look sitting in the audience. 2 days before the ceremony, he called to tell me he couldn't make it because Tiffany had a dance recital scheduled for the same time. She has a solo Ruby. It's really important to her, he explained. But Dad, I'm giving a speech. I'm valedictorian. I countered, my voice small even to my own ears. I know and I'm proud of you. But Tiffany is younger and she needs the support right now. You understand, right? You've always been so mature for your age. I said I understood. But standing at that podium, looking out at the empty seat where my father should have been, I felt the first crack form in my heart. My mother's enthusiastic cheering from the audience only highlighted his absence. High school brought new challenges and deeper hurts. I threw myself into academics, joining debate teams, student government, and the soccer team. I stayed busy partly out of genuine interest, but mostly to distract myself from my increasingly fractured relationship with my father. My achievements piled up: honor roll, every semester captain of the debate team by sophomore year state championship with my research project on environmental policy. My mother attended every event, every match, every ceremony, often rushing from her job, still in her work clothes. My father's attendance was spotty at best, non-existent at worst. Parent-teacher conferences were particularly painful. I'd sit between my mother and an empty chair, watching the door until the last possible moment, hoping he'd walk through it. My teachers learned not to ask where he was. One evening, while helping Diane set the table during one of my weekend visits, I overheard my father on the phone with a friend. Tiffany just made the junior dance company, can you believe it? Youngest one they've ever accepted. She's going to be a star someday, mark my words. His voice swelled with pride, the kind I'd been craving. He never once mentioned my recent perfect score on the PSAT or my selection as a finalist in the state debate championship. My 16th birthday fell on a weekend I was scheduled to be at his house. I'd been dropping hints about a concert I wanted to attend, and he had promised to take me. I spent extra time getting ready that morning, applying makeup carefully and choosing my outfit with deliberate consideration. But when I arrived at his house, Tiffany was curled up on the couch with a slight fever and runny nose. "I'm sorry, Ruby, we have to cancel our plans," my father said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Tiffany isn't feeling well and I don't want to leave her." "Can't Diane stay with her?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "She has a hair appointment she can't reschedule. Look, we'll celebrate next time." "Okay, Tiffany really needs me right now." I spent my 16th birthday alone in the guest room, listening to Tiffany cough occasionally while my father brought her soup and read her stories. Later I learned that Diane had returned from her appointment by noon, but my father never revisited our canceled plans. As college applications loomed on the horizon, I realized I would need to fund most of my education myself. My mother had set aside what she could, but it wasn't nearly enough for a 4-year degree. Meanwhile, I discovered that my father had already started a substantial college fund for Tiffany, who was only 12 at the time. I took on part-time jobs at the local library and tutoring younger students, saving every dollar I could. Tiffany, in contrast, was enrolled in expensive dance lessons, summer intensives, and private coaching. The disparity in resources was stark and painful. During one of my weekends at their house, I finally gathered the courage to speak to my father about how I was feeling. We were alone in the kitchen late one night, a rare moment without Diane or Tiffany present. "Dad, I feel like you care more about Tiffany than me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I know she's your stepdaughter, but sometimes I feel like I'm just a visitor in your life now." His response cut deeper than I expected. "Ruby, you're being too sensitive. You need to understand family obligations. Tiffany is younger and needs more guidance. You've always been independent and capable. Besides, you have your mother and Tiffany, only has me as a father figure. Just like that, my feelings were dismissed, my pain invalidated. The message was clear. My self-sufficiency was being used against me, while Tiffany's needs would always take precedence. My relationship with my mother deepened during these difficult years. She became my rock, my confidant, and my biggest cheerleader. She worked overtime to help with my school expenses, attended every event my father missed, and never spoke ill of him, despite having every reason to do so. She taught me what unconditional love looked like through her actions rather than empty words. When my college acceptance letters started arriving, my mother cried tears of joy and pride with each one. I was accepted to my dream school, Westlake University, with a substantial merit scholarship. When I called my father to share the news, his response was a distracted, "That's great, Ruby. We'll talk more about it later. Okay, I'm taking Tiffany to her dance competition right now." My high school graduation should have been a celebration of my accomplishments. I was graduating with highest honors, had earned multiple scholarships, and would be attending one of the top schools in the state. My father showed up 20 minutes late, missing my walk across the stage. He stayed for a perfunctory 45 minutes, taking only a couple of photos before explaining he needed to leave to help Tiffany prepare for her end-of-year dance showcase. My mother, determined to celebrate my achievement properly, had saved for months to throw me a small graduation party at our apartment. She invited family, friends, and some of my teachers. My father attended for barely half an hour, spending most of that time checking his watch or phone. As I packed for college that August, I still clung to hope that distance might improve our relationship, that perhaps my father would realize what he was missing by keeping me at arm's length. I left for Westlake University with mixed emotions, excitement for my future tempered by the persistent ache of my father's emotional absence. College was transformative in ways I hadn't anticipated. For the first time, I was in an environment where I could define myself on my own terms without the shadow of my father's preference for Tiffany looming over me. I joined the psychology club, wrote for the student newspaper, and made friends who valued me for who I was, not where I fell in a family hierarchy. My phone calls with my father became shorter and less frequent as the semester progressed. Our conversations followed a predictable pattern: brief inquiries about my classes, followed by lengthy updates about Tiffany's dance achievements or social life. I learned to lower my expectations for these interactions, to protect myself from the inevitable disappointment. My first Thanksgiving break was revealing. Returning to my father's house, I noticed how much more comfortable Tiffany was in that space than I had ever been. She moved through the rooms with ownership, while I still hesitated before opening the refrigerator. Dinner conversation revolved almost entirely around Tiffany's recent selection for a prestigious youth dance company, with only cursory questions about my college experience. When Tiffany began looking at colleges during my sophomore year, my father transformed into a completely different parent than he had been for me. He took time off work to accompany her on campus tours, hired a private counselor to help with her applications, and spent hours reviewing scholarship opportunities with her. I had navigated that entire process alone with only my mother's emotional support to sustain me. The contrast was stark and painful. What made it worse was that I would have welcomed his guidance given that neither of my parents had graduated from college. I was a first-generation student figuring out the unwritten rules of academia largely on my own, while Tiffany had access to resources I had never been offered. During my junior year, I changed my major from business to psychology. My coursework had begun to illuminate the dynamics of my own family situation, putting names to patterns I had long experienced: favoritism, emotional neglect, the golden child phenomenon. There was something both validating and devastating about seeing my personal pain reflected in academic texts. That same year, I met Michael in my research methods class. With dark curly hair, glasses, and a quiet confidence, he quickly became a close friend and eventually my first serious boyfriend. Michael noticed the unequal treatment almost immediately upon meeting my father during a weekend visit. "Your dad barely looked at you the entire dinner," he observed afterward as we walked back to my mother's apartment. "And he didn't ask me a single question about myself or our relationship." Having someone else acknowledge what I had experienced for years was profoundly validating. Michael saw me clearly in a way my father never had, appreciating my intelligence, my dry sense of humor, and my compassion without condition or comparison. Thanksgiving of my junior year, I brought Michael home to meet both sides of my family. My mother welcomed him warmly, preparing his favorite dessert after I had mentioned it casually in conversation weeks before. At my father's house, the contrast was painful. Dad barely engaged with Michael, directing most questions to Tiffany about her latest dance showcase instead. Michael squeezed my hand under the table, a small gesture of solidarity that meant everything. Christmas that year brought the most blatant display of favoritism yet. My father presented Tiffany, then a high school junior, with keys to a brand new Honda Civic, complete with a giant red bow on the hood. My gift was a $100 gift card to Amazon and a generic mug with the word daughter printed on it. The disparity was so obvious that even Diane looked uncomfortable. Later that night, safely back at my mother's apartment, I broke down completely. Years of accumulated hurt came pouring out as Michael held me, listening without trying to fix the unfixable. "Why doesn't he love me enough?" I sobbed into Michael's shoulder. "What's wrong with me that his real daughter is the one who isn't actually his?" "Ruby, this isn't about you being unlovable," Michael said firmly. "This is about him failing as a father. You deserve so much better than what he's giving you." That conversation was a turning point. With Michael's encouragement, I began seeing a therapist at the university counseling centers. Yankowski helped me understand that my father's behavior reflected his limitations, not my worth. We worked through exercises to recognize and challenge the negative beliefs I had internalized, that I was less deserving of love, that I needed to earn affection through achievement, that being self-sufficient meant I didn't need emotional support. The work was difficult but necessary. As I progressed through therapy, I began setting small boundaries with my father, no longer dropping everything when he did occasionally reach out, no longer pretending his behavior didn't hurt me. My academic success continued despite these emotional challenges. I made the dean's list every semester, but when I texted my father a photo of the certificate, his response came 3 days later. "Good job. Sorry for the late reply, been busy with Tiffany's college visits." During my senior year, I secured a prestigious research internship that resulted in co-publication in an undergraduate psychology journal. It was a significant achievement that could help me with graduate school applications. I sent the published article to my father, hoping for acknowledgement of this tangible accomplishment. "Looks interesting," he texted back while on speakerphone with me. I could hear Tiffany in the background asking about dinner plans. "Hey, I need to go, but we'll talk about this later, okay?" We never did. As graduation approached, I felt a mixture of pride in my accomplishments and lingering sadness about my relationship with my father. Despite everything, I still wanted him to see me graduate, to witness this milestone I had worked so hard to achieve, largely without his support. 4 months before the ceremony, I called him specifically to discuss graduation plans. "Dad, my graduation is Saturday, May 15th at 10 in the morning. It's really important to me that you're there. Can you please make sure to keep that date clear?" "Of course, Ruby Tuesday," he said, using the old nickname that now felt hollow. "I wouldn't miss it for anything. Send me all the details and I'll be there front and center." "Do you promise?" I asked, hating how childlike my voice sounded. "I promise. No matter what, I'll be there." I wanted desperately to believe him. The weeks leading up to graduation were filled with a flurry of preparations. I purchased my dress 2 months in advance, a navy blue sheath that my mother said brought out the blue in my eyes. I arranged accommodations for my mom and aunt, who would be driving up together. Michael, who had graduated the previous semester and was already working at a local marketing firm, took time off to help with arrangements. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I called my father to confirm the final details. "Just checking that you have all the information for graduation, Dad. The ceremony starts at 10, but family should arrive by 9:30 to get good seats. I can only reserve 3 seats, so those are for you, Mom, and Aunt Susan." "I've got it all written down," he assured me. "I'm looking forward to it, Ruby. I'm really proud of you." Those words were like water in a desert, and I clung to them despite years of experience suggesting I should know better. The day before graduation, as I was putting the finishing touches on my valedictorian speech, my phone rang. Seeing my father's name on the screen, I assumed he was calling to confirm his arrival time for the next day. Instead, his voice carried that familiar tone of rehearsed regret. "Ruby, something's come up at work. A real emergency with a major client. I have to fly to Chicago tonight, and I won't be back until Sunday at the earliest." The room seemed to tilt around me. "But Dad, it's my college graduation. You promised. Can't someone else handle the client?" "I'm the only one who can resolve this situation, Ruby. I'm really sorry, but this is my job we're talking about. You understand the importance of professional responsibilities, right? You've always been so mature about these things." There it was again, my supposed maturity being weaponized against me, used as justification for yet another disappointment. But this wasn't just another missed soccer game or school play. This was my college graduation, the culmination of 4 years of hard work, much of it accomplished without his support. "I understand professional responsibilities, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "I also understand keeping promises to your children. Ruby, please don't make this harder than it already is. I feel terrible about this. I'll make it up to you, I promise." Another promise. Another future disappointment being packaged and prepared for delivery. "Sure, Dad. I have to go now. I need to practice my speech." I hung up before he could respond, before my composure cracked completely. Michael found me curled up on my bed 20 minutes later, speech notes scattered across the floor, body shaking with silent sobs. "He's not coming," was all I could manage to say. Michael gathered me in his arms, letting me cry until I had no tears left. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, as if the universe were mocking my inner turmoil with perfect weather. I put on the navy dress, fixed my hair, and applied makeup carefully to hide the evidence of a sleepless night. My mother and aunt arrived early, both of them radiant with pride. "You look beautiful," my mother said, straightening my graduation cap. "I am so incredibly proud of you, Ruby, not just for your accomplishments, but for the person you've become. Kind, resilient, compassionate. Everything I could have hoped for in a daughter." Her words were a balm, but they couldn't completely heal the raw wound of my father's absence. As valedictorian, I sat on the stage facing the audience. From this vantage point, I could clearly see the empty seat in the family section, a visible representation of the space my father had left in my life. When it was my turn to speak, I rose on unsteady legs and approached the podium. "Today marks not just the completion of our degrees, but the beginning of the people we will become," I began. My prepared speech was about resilience and growth, themes that suddenly felt almost too personal to share. But I continued, voice growing stronger with each word, finding power in vulnerability. "The challenges we've overcome have shaped us. The support we've received has sustained us. And sometimes the hardships we've endured have taught us more than our successes ever could." Looking out at the audience, I saw my mother wiping tears from her eyes, saw Michael nodding encouragingly, saw my aunt beaming with pride. The empty seat seemed less significant now, surrounded by people who had shown up consistently, who had loved me without condition. The celebration afterward was bittersweet. My mother had arranged a small gathering at a local restaurant, and my extended family and closest friends surrounded me with love and congratulations. If anyone noticed my father's absence, they were kind enough not to mention it. For a few hours, I managed to push aside the hurt and simply enjoy the milestone I had achieved. 3 days later, mindlessly scrolling through social media to distract myself from the lingering disappointment, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A distant cousin had posted photos from Tiffany's high school graduation, which had apparently taken place the weekend after mine. There, in the center of a group photo, stood my father beaming proudly with his arm around Tiffany in her cap and gown. I scrolled through more photos, each one more devastating than the last. My father presenting Tiffany with an enormous bouquet. My father giving a toast at what appeared to be an elaborate graduation party. My father helping Tiffany move her tassel from right to left, a moment I had experienced without him. There had been no work emergency, no client crisis in Chicago. Just another lie, another clear message about where I ranked in his priorities. With shaking hands, I called him. When he answered, I couldn't even manage a greeting. There was no work emergency, was there? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. A pause. Ruby, I can explain. You missed my college graduation, my speech as valedictorian to attend Tiffany's high school graduation. Just tell me the truth for once. He sighed heavily. Tiffany needed me more. She was nervous about the ceremony, about giving her speech as class president. Your graduation wasn't as important because you've always been so independent, so capable of handling things on your own. The casual cruelty of his words left me breathless. Not as important, Dad. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major. I was valedictorian. How could you possibly think that wasn't important? That's not what I meant. Of course it was important, but you have to understand, Ruby. Tiffany has become my real daughter now. We've built a relationship over all these years while you were with your mother. She depends on me in a way you never did. His real daughter. The words echoed in my head, confirmation of what I had felt, but never wanted to believe. In his mind, I had been replaced, relegated to the periphery of his life, while Tiffany occupied the center. I understand perfectly, I said, surprised by the calm in my voice despite the storm raging inside me. I won't bother you anymore. Ruby, don't be dramatic. This is just how blended families work sometimes. We can talk about this when you've calmed down. There's nothing left to talk about. Goodbye, Dad. I ended the call and then with deliberate movements blocked his number on my phone. I removed him from all my social media accounts. I sent a brief email asking him not to contact me for the foreseeable future. Then I turned off my phone completely and collapsed onto the floor of my apartment. The physical manifestation of emotional pain is something they don't prepare you for. The heaviness in your chest like concrete slowly hardening around your heart. The difficulty breathing as if your lungs have forgotten their purpose. The comprehensive exhaustion that makes even blinking feel like an insurmountable task. For 3 days I barely ate or slept. Michael brought soup I couldn't taste and held me through nights when tears came without sound or warning. My mother drove up immediately after I called her, arriving with fierce protectiveness and practical support. Between them, they created a safe harbor where I could begin to process the finality of what had happened. He said Tiffany is his real daughter now. I told my mother on the second night, the words still burning my throat. She took my hands in hers, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Then he has lost the privilege of being your father, and that Ruby is entirely his loss. The weeks following my decision to cut contact were turbulent. My father's initial texts and voicemails, which I received notifications for despite blocking his number, ranged from apologetic to indignant to wounded. I said I was sorry, one message read. You're overreacting, claimed another. After everything I've done for you, a particularly galling one began. I deleted them all without responding. Meanwhile, I threw myself into starting my professional life. I had accepted a position at the Westlake Community Counseling Center, working primarily with adolescents struggling with family issues. The irony wasn't lost on me, but there was something healing about helping others navigate situations that echoed my own experiences. A month after graduation, my father escalated his attempts to reach me. He showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening as I was returning from work. Seeing him leaning against his car in the parking lot, looking simultaneously defensive and expectant, sent a wave of anxiety through my body. Ruby, we need to talk, he said, moving toward me as I reluctantly approached my building. You can't just cut me out of your life over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, Dad, I replied, keeping my voice level despite my racing heart. It was a pattern, a lifetime of showing me where I stand in your priorities. I need space and time to process everything. His expression hardened. Space and time. You're being childish. I'm your father, Ruby. Are you? Because you told me Tiffany is your real daughter now. Those were your exact words. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I didn't mean it like that. I was frustrated and you were being difficult. I'm not being difficult now, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I'm being clear. I need you to respect my decision. So that's it. 22 years of being your father and you can just decide it's over. You decided it was over long ago, Dad. You just didn't bother to tell me. Please leave now or I'll have to call building security. I didn't wait for his response, walking past him into my building with my head high despite the trembling in my legs. Once inside, I called Michael, who came over immediately. We changed the security settings on my apartment building's entry system that night, removing my father from the approved visitor list. 3 months later, I accepted a job offer in Nashville, a position at a respected counseling center specializing in family trauma. The move felt symbolic as well as practical, a physical distance to match the emotional boundary I had established. I didn't share my new address with my father, though he managed to get it anyway through a well-meaning but misguided family friend. Cards and letters began arriving at my new apartment, their tone shifting from demanding to pleading as months passed. I read them at first, then began setting them aside unopened. They were exercises in self-justification, rather than genuine attempts at understanding how he had hurt me. My father also began a campaign of reaching out through intermediaries. He called my mother, who firmly but politely informed him that she would not be involved in our situation. He contacted mutual family friends, spinning a narrative where he was the victim of an ungrateful daughter's unreasonable grudge. A few relatives reached out to me, urging reconciliation without ever asking for my side of the story. With each flying monkey he dispatched, I became more certain of my decision to maintain distance. A truly remorseful person would respect my boundaries, not systematically violate them under the guise of making things right. I established clear guidelines with everyone in my life regarding contact with my father. With some, this meant limiting what information they could share about me. With others, it meant taking a step back from the relationship entirely when they proved unable to respect my boundaries. The first holiday season without any contact with my father was more difficult than I had anticipated. Despite years of disappointing Christmases and Thanksgivings, there was still a persistent ache, a grief for the father I had wanted rather than the one I actually had. Michael and my mother created new traditions with me, filling the season with warmth and genuine connection, but the shadow of absence remained. My therapy sessions during this period were crucial to my healing process. Dr. Mercer, my new therapist in Nashville, helped me understand that my grief was normal and necessary. You're mourning the loss of a relationship, but also the loss of the possibility that it might someday become what you needed, she explained. That's a complicated grief, and it deserves space and acknowledgement. We worked through exercises designed to help me internalize a fundamental truth. My father's inability to love me as I deserved was about his limitations, not my worthiness. I began to recognize the ways I had contorted myself trying to earn his approval, and slowly, painstakingly, I started to straighten my spine and stand in my own truth. My career flourished as I channeled my personal experiences into professional insight. I developed a specialization in working with clients dealing with parental emotional abandonment, helping them navigate the complex terrain I was traversing myself. There was something powerfully healing about transforming my pain into purpose. Michael remained a steadfast presence through all of this, never pushing me to reconcile for the sake of false peace, never suggesting I should get over it to make others comfortable. A year after our move to Nashville, on a crisp autumn evening beside the Cumberland River, he asked me to marry him. The joy of that moment was pure and uncomplicated, a reminder that I was worthy of love exactly as I was. The question of whether to invite my father to our wedding arose almost immediately. Well-meaning friends suggested that I would regret excluding him, that weddings were times for healing family rifts. But as I sat with this question, listening to my intuition, Rather than social expectations, I knew that his presence would cast a shadow over a day that should be filled with light. I don't want to spend my wedding day managing my emotions around him or worrying about what drama he might create, I told Michael as we discussed the guest list. I've spent too much of my life accommodating his feelings at the expense of my own. Michael squeezed my hand. Then he's not invited. Simple as that. My father learned about our engagement through the family grapevine, and his response was swift and manipulative. A lengthy letter arrived full of reminiscences about my childhood and vague acknowledgments of mistakes without specific recognition of the harm he had caused. I can't imagine not walking my little girl down the aisle, he wrote, disregarding the fact that I hadn't been his little girl in any meaningful way for most of my life. The letter concluded with a carefully crafted guilt trip. I know I haven't been perfect, but what father is, all I'm asking for is the chance to be part of the most important day of your life. Don't let temporary anger rob us both of this precious moment. I read the letter twice, searching for any indication that he understood the depth of his betrayals or respected my need for distance. Finding none, I filed it away with the other's evidence of his continued self-centeredness rather than genuine remorse. The strength I found in maintaining this boundary surprised me. The Ruby of a few years ago would have capitulated, would have invited him to keep the peace, would have swallowed her own needs to accommodate his wants. But I was no longer that person. Therapy, supportive relationships, and the clarity that comes from distance had transformed me. I could finally see the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, between healing myself and reopening old wounds. Our wedding planning proceeded without the complications my father would have introduced. I asked my Uncle Thomas, my mother's brother, who had been a supportive presence throughout my life, to walk me down the aisle. When I made this request over dinner at his home, his eyes filled with tears. "I would be honored, Ruby," he said, squeezing my hand. "Truly honored." The absence of my father created space for deeper connections with the people who had consistently shown up for me. My mother threw herself into helping with arrangements, her joy uncontained, as we selected flowers and tasted cakes. Michael's parents welcomed me warmly into their family, never once making me feel like my complicated family situation was unusual or problematic. 3 weeks before the wedding, a certified letter arrived at my apartment. Inside was a cashier's check for $20,000 and a brief note from my father. "A contribution to your wedding, a new life. No strings attached. I just want you to be happy." The check felt like a Trojan horse, an attempt to purchase access or absolution. After discussing it with Michael and Dr. Mercer, I returned it with a brief note of my own. "Thank you for the gesture, but I cannot accept this. Ruby." My wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the September air crisp with early autumn. As my mother helped me into my dress, her hands gentle as they fastened the delicate buttons, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey to this day had been complicated, but I was exactly where and with whom I was meant to be. Walking down the aisle on my uncle's arm, seeing Michael waiting for me with love shining in his eyes, I felt complete in a way I had never experienced before. The ceremony was everything we had hoped for, personal and intimate, filled with readings and music that reflected our journey together. At the reception, surrounded by people who truly saw and valued me, I almost didn't notice the commotion at the entrance until my mother's expression changed, her eyes focusing on something behind me. Turning, I saw my father attempting to enter the venue, a large gift box in his arms, arguing with the security personnel we had hired specifically to prevent such an occurrence. The sight of him sent a wave of anxiety crashing through me, disrupting the joy I had been immersed in moments before. Michael noticed immediately, following my gaze, and then squeezing my hand reassuringly. "I'll handle this," he said quietly. And before I could respond, he was making his way toward the entrance, his best man Trevor following closely behind. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see my father's face growing increasingly red as Michael spoke to him, gesturing firmly toward the exit. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only a few minutes, security escorted my father out, and Michael returned to my side. "He's gone," he assured me, his voice gentle. And he won't be coming back. Are you okay? The concern in his eyes nearly undid me. How strange and wonderful to be with someone who prioritized my well-being so completely, who didn't require me to minimize my feelings or pretend I wasn't affected. I'm okay, I said, and was surprised to find it was true. This is our day, and he doesn't get to take anything from it. The rest of the reception unfolded beautifully, the brief disruption fading into insignificance against the backdrop of genuine celebration. We danced, laughed, and shared moments with the people who had supported our relationship from the beginning. When it was time to leave, we walked through an archway of sparklers held by our loved ones, their faces illuminated with joy that reflected our own. Our honeymoon in the Greek islands was a blissful escape, a time for us to connect deeply without the pressures of work or wedding planning. Lying on a secluded beach on our third day, I found myself thinking about my father for the first time since we'd left Nashville. Do you think I'm being too harsh? I asked Michael, the question emerging unbidden from some lingering place of doubt. By maintaining this boundary with my dad. Michael turned to look at me, his expression thoughtful. Do you feel at peace with your decision? I considered this feeling the sun warm on my skin, listening to the gentle rhythm of waves on the shore. Yes, I said finally. I feel sad sometimes, but not confused or uncertain. Then you're not being too harsh, he said simply. You're taking care of yourself in the way no one did when you were younger. His perspective was like a key unlocking something inside me, releasing me from the last vestiges of guilt that had been clinging to my decision. Returning home from our honeymoon, we found our answering machine filled with messages from my father. His tone escalated from conciliatory to angry, to wounded a familiar cycle that now affected me less than it once had. I deleted them all after listening once, no longer feeling compelled to analyze or respond. We settled into married life with joy and purpose, creating routines and traditions that belonged uniquely to us. Michael's work in marketing was taking off with a recent promotion to creative director at his firm. My therapy practice continued to grow with a focus on helping clients heal from family trauma and establish healthy boundaries. 6 months after our wedding, we purchased our first home, a charming craftsman-style house with a wraparound porch and a small but promising garden. As we unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, transforming the space into our home, I felt a deepening sense of having created something my father had never provided, a place of safety, consistency, and unconditional acceptance. It was in this new home on a quiet Sunday morning, as sunlight streamed through stained glass windows we had installed above the front door, that I discovered I was pregnant. The 2 pink lines on the test seemed to pulse with possibility, with the promise of a new chapter neither of us had expected quite so soon. When I showed Michael the test, his face transformed with wonder and joy. "We're having a baby," he whispered, placing his hand gently on my still flat stomach. "Ruby, we're going to be parents." The pregnancy brought a complex mix of emotions. Joy, certainly, and excitement about the life growing inside me. But also fear, a deep and primal concern that I might somehow repeat the patterns of my upbringing despite my best intentions. "What if I don't know how to be a good parent?" I confessed to Dr. Mercer during one session, my hands protectively covering my small bump. My models were either absent or inconsistent. "But you've already learned so much about what not to do," she pointed out. "And you have something your parents didn't: awareness. You're conscious of these patterns and committed to breaking them." Her words resonated with truth. I had done the work, was still doing the work to ensure I wouldn't pass down the legacy of conditional love and favoritism. This child would be loved completely, would never question their place in my heart, or have to earn my attention. News of my pregnancy traveled through family connections, eventually reaching my father. He sent a large package of expensive baby items to our home, along with a note expressing his excitement about becoming a grandfather. The boundary violation of sending gifts to an address I had never shared with him didn't seem to register as problematic in his mind. I donated the items to a women's shelter and didn't acknowledge the gifts or the note. The message was clear: becoming a grandparent wasn't a reset button that erased years of harmful behavior. As my due date approached, my father's attempts to insert himself into my life intensified. He posted frequently on social media about his impending grandfatherhood, sharing ultrasound images I had sent to my aunt, and claiming involvement in preparations he knew nothing about. These public performances of Grandfather of the Year felt like salt in wounds that were still healing. Our daughter Lily Grace arrived on a stormy April night after 20 hours of labor. Looking into her tiny face, her features a perfect blend of Michael and me, I felt a love so fierce and protective it took my breath away. This was what unconditional love felt like, immediate and complete, without expectation or condition. We had been in the hospital less than 12 hours when a nurse informed us that a man claiming to be my father was insisting on seeing the baby. Despite our explicit instructions about approved visitors, he had somehow talked his way past the front desk by playing the distraught grandfather card. The news triggered an immediate panic attack. My heart raced, my breathing became shallow, and tears filled my eyes as the walls seemed to close in around me. Michael took charge of the situation, his voice firm, as he instructed the nurse to have security remove my father from the premises immediately. "He is not authorized to be here," Michael explained, his arm around my shoulders as I tried to regulate my breathing. "He is not welcome to see my wife or our daughter today or any day." After the nurse left to handle the situation, Michael turned his full attention to me, guiding me through breathing exercises until the worst of the panic subsided. "He can't get in here," he assured me. "He can't get near Lily. You're both safe, I promise." Later that day, my mother arrived with tears of joy and armfuls of practical gifts. Watching her hold Lily for the first time, her face radiant with grandmother love, I felt a healing circle complete itself. This was how family should be, how love should be expressed without agenda or expectation. In the weeks following Lily's birth, my father escalated his public campaign, posting regularly about being denied access to his granddaughter. These posts garnered sympathy from people who didn't know the full story, creating a narrative where I was the unreasonable one, cruelly keeping an innocent child from her loving grandfather. The pressure from extended family increased as well. "You need to think about what's best for Lily," one cousin admonished me over the phone. "Children need all the grandparents they can get." What's best for Lily is being surrounded by people who respect her mother's boundaries and who understand what healthy love looks like. I responded, no longer willing to justify my choices to people who hadn't lived my experience. These conversations were exhausting but reaffirming. With each defense of my boundary, I grew more certain of its necessity. My father hadn't changed, hadn't done the work to understand how his behavior had impacted me. Allowing him access to Lily would only perpetuate the cycle, potentially exposing her to the same conditional love that had damaged me. As challenging as this period was, it also brought unexpected moments of clarity and connection. Michael's parents stepped beautifully into their grandparent roles, respecting our parenting decisions while offering support without intrusion. My mother bloomed as the grandmother, her natural warmth and steadiness providing exactly the kind of grandmotherly presence I had hoped Lily would have. And in the quiet moments rocking Lily to sleep in the nursery, we had painted sunshine yellow, I found a peace I had been seeking my entire life. In creating a family based on respect, consistency, and unconditional love, I was healing not just my own wounds, but breaking a generational pattern that had caused so much pain. 3 years have passed since that stormy night when Lily entered our world, changing it forever with her curious mind and boundless heart. She's a whirlwind of energy now, her dark curls bouncing as she runs through our backyard, chasing butterflies or helping me tend to the vegetable garden we planted last spring. My therapy practice has continued to evolve, focusing specifically on adults healing from parental abandonment and favoritism. I've developed a specialization that draws on both my professional training and personal experience, creating a unique approach that has helped many clients navigate their own complex family dynamics. Last year, I started a support group that meets monthly, providing a safe space for shared experiences and collective healing. Occasional updates about my father still reach me through the family network. He continues to tell anyone who will listen that I'm going through a phase that I'll come around eventually when I grow up and realize family is everything. His narrative casts him as the patient, long-suffering father waiting for his stubborn daughter to see reason. What he fails to understand, what he has always failed to understand, is that I have grown up. It was my growth, my developing sense of self-worth, that enabled me to recognize the toxicity of our relationship and make the difficult decision to end it. The most unexpected development of the past year came on a Tuesday afternoon at the farmer's market. Pushing Lily in her stroller as we examined fresh peaches, I heard a voice behind me that instantly transported me back in time. "Ruby, is that you?" Turning, I found myself face to face with Tiffany, my stepsister. She looked different than I remembered her, once long blonde hair now cut into a stylish bob, her eyes more serious behind fashionable glasses. For a moment I froze, uncertain how to respond to this ghost from my past. "It is you," she said, smiling tentatively. "I thought so. And this must be Lily. I've seen pictures on your mom's Facebook." The mention of my mother reminded me that they had maintained some contact over the years, a connection I had neither encouraged nor discouraged. Tiffany had never been the source of the problem, merely the unwitting beneficiary of my father's skewed affections. "Yes, this is Lily," I said, finding my voice. "She just turned 3. It's been a long time, Tiffany." An awkward silence fell between us, heavy with unspoken history. Lily, oblivious to the tension, offered Tiffany one of the strawberries we had purchased earlier, breaking the ice with her innocent gesture. "Would you maybe want to get coffee?" Tiffany asked, as she accepted the strawberry with a smile for Lily. "I understand if you don't, but I'd really like to talk to you." Something in her expression of vulnerability I recognized from my own mirror made me nod despite my reservations. We arranged to meet the following day at a cafe near my office after I'd had time to process this unexpected encounter. Our coffee meeting was illuminating in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Tiffany, now 29 and working as an elementary school music teacher, had done her own growing up and reflection over the years. "I always knew Dad favored me," she admitted, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her mug. "Even as a kid I could see it, but I was afraid to say anything. Afraid I'd lose his attention if I pointed it out." Her candor surprised me, as did her next words. "I've been in therapy too, working through how messed up our family dynamic was. Dad's favoritism wasn't healthy for either of us, Ruby. It damaged you directly, but it damaged me too in different ways. It gave me a distorted view of love, made me think affection was something that could be lost if I didn't perform correctly." As we talked, a new understanding formed between us. Tiffany had been carrying her own guilt and confusion about her role in our family drama, despite being a child herself when it all began. She shared stories of times she had attempted to redirect our father's attention toward me, only to be shut down or ignored. "The worst was your college graduation," she confessed, pain evident in her voice. "I begged him to go. I told him my high school graduation wasn't as important, that I had 3 more years before college. He got angry, told me to stop trying to manage adult relationships I couldn't understand. It was the first time I really saw how selfish he could be." Her words were both validating and saddening. Validating to know that others had seen the truth of who my father was, saddening to realize that even Tiffany, his real daughter, had experienced her own version of his conditional love. We parted with tentative plans to meet again, both acknowledging that whatever relationship might develop between us would be entirely new, built on our adult choices, rather than forced family connections. There was something healing in that possibility, in reclaiming a relationship that had been tainted by our father's manipulation. Shortly after reconnecting with Tiffany, I learned through her that my father had been telling everyone I would eventually forgive him, that it was just a matter of time before I came back bringing his granddaughter with me. This persistent denial of my agency, this refusal to accept my decision as final, sparked something resolute within me. After discussing it with Michael and Dr. Mercer, I decided to write my father one final letter, not for his benefit, but for my own closure. I spent weeks drafting it, ensuring that every word reflected my truth without being clouded by anger or resentment. I have forgiven you, I wrote toward the end, not for your benefit, but for mine. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean resuming a relationship that caused me so much pain. It means I have released the anger and hurt that once consumed me, that I no longer wait for an apology or understanding you seem incapable of providing. I have forgiven you, but I do not want you in my life or in my daughter's life. This is not a temporary decision or a punishment. It is a choice I have made for my well-being and for the healthy family I am now creating. Please respect this boundary as it will not change. I sent the letter certified mail requiring his signature, ensuring he could not later claim he hadn't received it. Whether he truly understood its content, whether he finally recognized the permanence of my decision, I may never know. But writing those words stating my truth clearly and unapologetically provided a sense of completion I hadn't realized I still needed. The peace I have found in establishing this boundary has transformed every aspect of my life. My relationship with Michael continues to deepen, built on mutual respect and authentic communication. My bond with Lily is everything I wished for as a child, a consistent, unconditional love that she can rely on absolutely. My therapy practice allows me to transform my personal pain into professional insight, helping others navigate similar journeys. Most profoundly, I have stopped waiting. Stopped waiting for an apology that will never come, for understanding that will never develop, for a father who will never be what I needed. In releasing that weight, I have freed myself from the last chains of expectation and disappointment. My mother, who has been my steadfast supporter through this entire journey, said something recently that resonated deeply. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what's hurting you, even when others insist you should stay for the sake of family. She's right. We are taught from childhood that family relationships are sacred, that we should forgive and reconcile no matter what. But some relationships cannot be fixed, especially when one party refuses to acknowledge the harm they've caused or continues to violate established boundaries. Walking away isn't failure or giving up. It's choosing yourself, choosing health over harm, peace over chaos. Lily will grow up knowing she is loved completely, not as a replacement for someone else, not in comparison to anyone, but simply and wholly for herself. She will learn about boundaries by watching me maintain mine, about self-respect, by seeing me practice it, about healthy relationships, by experiencing one between her parents. The cycle has been broken. As for my father, he continues to wait for a reconciliation that will never come. His waiting is his choice, just as my walking away was mine. I wish him healing and growth, but from a distance that protects my hard-won peace. The most profound lesson I've learned through this journey is that family is not defined by blood or legal ties, but by love and respect. By who shows up consistently, who sees you clearly, who values your boundaries as extensions of your selfhood rather than obstacles to overcome. Family is what we create through choice and commitment, through weathering storms together and celebrating joys without comparison or condition. By this definition, I am richly blessed with family surrounded by people who love without keeping score, who support without expectation, who see me for exactly who I am and love me not despite it, but because of it. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to cut contact with a family member? How did you know it was the right choice? Share your experience in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from relationships that consistently cause you pain.